Today we have Marc Randolph, who is the co-founder of Netflix and a veteran Silicon Valley entrepreneur, advisor, and investor. He is served as the founding CEO and the executive producer of the website and as a member of its board of directors until his retirement from Netflix in 2004. He's also been a founder of more than a half dozen other successful startups, a mentor to scores of early stage entrepreneurs, and an investor to numerous successful and unsuccessful tech ventures. Thank you so much for being here.
It is a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you. So, your unique skill set, you've done a lot of things, and you must have some perspective on what's had you be successful. If you think about your own unique skill set, what do you think that is, and how has that contributed to your success over the years?
Well, so the first thing is I have a pretty short attention span, and so I've managed to take this thing, which is a disadvantage, and turn it into an advantage. But I mean, I'm kidding in a way, but one of the huge assets, I think, for an entrepreneur is triage. Yeah. Which is that ability to say there's 100 things that are going to be broken, 100 things on fire, 100 things and that are all under-resourced. Yeah. And there's a certain skill set that says, how do I figure out what the 2 or 3 things are that if I get these right, it lifts everything.
That'll work, yeah.
So there's kind of a skill that says, A, I'm going to identify the 3, because they're not the ones necessarily screaming the loudest. Yeah. And then being able to blank everything else out and fix those. Yeah. And so it just kind of turns out that I kind of have a sense for that. Yeah. And I think that's a critical piece in my success in starting companies.
Absolutely. And so this is a question I don't normally ask, but I'm curious because my experience, and obviously we have a much smaller business than you've had, but even in our organization, we have the same challenge, right? Which is that we have less resources than we have demands for those resources. Right. And when you have to make those decisions, you end up with sort of like competing forces in your organization. And how do you get teams aligned around life when they're not the ones getting the resources?
Well, I was going to say that that's the other big thing, which is a skill set. There's this leadership thing, and I'm not saying I'm some uniquely gifted leader, because in many ways there's a lot of things I'm terrible at in leadership. Yeah. But in an early stage company, that's a big piece of the leadership, which is how do you keep people all moving in the same direction, even when they're working on entirely different things at entirely different paces. Yep. I mean, I think we used to call that at Netflix tightly aligned, loosely coupled, something like that. Everyone's going in the same direction. And I think that is part of it, is that as long as everyone understands what the ultimate objective is, and it's not a personal piece, it's not my department, your department, we all know where we're going, and then everyone begins to say it's right and proper that the resources should go to that area. Yeah,
do they really, or do they just silently think you're an idiot for not giving their team the resources?
Oh, I can't speak for your company.
No.
But and one of the things early on is it's the people too. Yeah. I mean, picking the right people is critical. Yeah. And even though we're decent at it, you never get it right. So it also means letting go of the people who aren't right. Yeah. But you've got to have people who are motivated for the good of the company. Yeah. And it's not just a lip service thing, as you're pointing out. Yeah. You have to detect these people really want to achieve something together. Yeah. It's almost this egoless decision making. Yeah. Like Reed Hastings, my co-founder, and I, we used to fight like cats and dogs sometimes, and then all of a sudden you'd come to the self-evidently correct decision, and then it didn't make a difference whose idea it was or who was right or wrong, because we then knew what we had to do. Yeah. And then we'd kind of look up, and everyone at the table was kind of sitting there with these wide eyes. Why are mom and dad fighting? Yep. You know, but it's that culture permeate, at least at Netflix and other startups of mine, the whole culture. Yeah. Where everyone can fight, everyone can argue, everyone can make their best case for what's right. Yeah. But once you arrive at the right decision, you fall in behind, not out of some sense of obligation, out of a sense of we've come to the right decision.
Yeah, Patrick Lencioni wrote about that exact thing, and I think 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or something about exactly that we need to create an environment where people can express themselves like passionately, and yet then like let that go when the decision's once been made.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's challenging. So the next question I usually ask is, what's working to get you customers right now? But since you don't have customers or business at the moment, you're our first unemployed guest, as you mentioned. Tell me what's working in life.
So one of the other big challenge of an entrepreneur, as you and your customers all know, is it's all encompassing. I mean, it is 7 by 24.
Yep.
And I really early on said the thing I'm going to try and figure out is a balance thing. And it's kind of funny when people say, what are you most proud of? I'll usually give a business answer sort of thing. But quite frankly, the thing that I'm most proud of is the fact that I have started 5, 6 companies, but I'm still married to the same person. I still know my kids, they know me, I think they like me. And so when you say, what do I think I've kind of gotten right? I think it's a balance thing.
Even during the crazy days of when Netflix was doing this, you were able to get home and go to dinner with the family?
I was lucky. I would come home, have dinner with my kids are young, have dinner with the family, and go back to work.
Go back to work,
But then one day a week, I was done. 5 o'clock, I was out the door finished, we got to dinner, that was my time. And the great thing is the first month or 2 you're doing that, it's brutal. Because you're walking away from things. But after a while, it's funny, the whole organization moves around that. And all of a sudden, the other execs are all saying, this is great, I can leave early on Tuesdays. Which is a good thing, too.
It's a good thing for them,
And eventually that gets easier and easier. And the thing is, that never stops, even though don't have a current startup I'm working on full time. You always have competing interests, and I'm a type A person, I want to dig deeply into things. So I occasionally move off track, come back on track, but right now I'm feeling pretty good that I've got a reasonable mix.
And what is the thing that you're working on, kind of not business-wise necessarily, but what is your edge right now? What are you learning next? What are you excited about these days?
I do business stuff. I just don't have my own company anymore. When I left Netflix more than 10 years ago, but once you're an entrepreneur, you're never not an entrepreneur. And I needed that fix. You need to be solving really hard problems with really smart people. And it took me a while to find it, but I've done that now by mentoring other early stage entrepreneurs.
Interesting.
So I have a handful of companies I work with, less than 5, but then I get to go in, sit around their conference table, solve really hard problems, really smart people, and then I get to go home, and they get to stay up all night.
Which is actually living the dream.
That it is. That's part of that totally is a motivating thing. It's what keeps me learning, because entrepreneurship is learning all the time. And certainly things are dramatically different now in how things are marketed, how they're sold. Even the accounting methods are changing every day.
Isn't that bizarre?
All this stuff is changing. And if I had stayed back 10, 12 years ago, that'd be so stale. And so this is a way to keep current.
And what have you learned recently? What's the kind of exciting thing that you've been chewing your teeth on?
Well, things take off so much more quickly than before. Before you had the chance to nurture things, and the failures, you could take a long time to analyze them. But boy, now you can turn things on and boom, get almost instant customer attention. And so the great thing about that is now when you're trying to test things and try things and experiment, that learning cycle has gotten really, really fast. And that is just so exciting to me.
There's a lot to learn in that area.
I mean, I started I was a direct marketing guy way back before the internet came along. And that was all about test, measure, repeat. But those cycles, they're 30 days, they're 45 days. And then at the dawn of the internet era, they're compressed down to 3 or 4 days, 5 days, and now you can do it. You can do an A/B test, have the answer in 20 minutes if your sample sizes are big enough.
Amazing. So if you could go back, kind of to the beginning of your career, or maybe even in particular your career at Netflix, and give yourself a piece of advice that would have made the biggest difference in your kind of trajectory, what would that advice be?
Don't fall in love with your ideas. There's this balance you have to make in a startup, which is on one hand, everyone's going to tell you your idea is terrible, but you have to have this confidence that no, this is going to make it. And you've got to fight.
Persevere,
Persevere. But what I've kind of realized now is that the idea is nothing. That it doesn't really count. It's almost always wrong. That I bumped into, I don't think I've ever met a single company where the thing they're successful for is the thing they started out doing.
Interesting.
And so I've now realized, no, it's just a starting point. It's a place to begin your exploration. And the sooner you can realize that my original idea of how to solve this, that's gone. Now I'm on to this next thing I'm trying, and this next thing.
Interesting. And how, so that's a challenge because we do, as in the entrepreneurial community, kind of rever our confidence and perseverance and and almost contrary in nature, right? But at the same time, you don't want to dig yourself into a hole that's not going to, where there's not another side. So how do you know when it's time to kind of give up?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
And I'm still looking for some pithy way I can lay it out. Here's how to tell when this one's stale and it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer because for every example I say of someone who gave up too soon, there's someone who hung on too long.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it just has to be one of those feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody, I wish I could remember his name, had this great quote which was like, don't fall in love with the idea, fall in love with the problem.
Yeah.
Because that's something you can hang on to forever.
Yeah.
You go, I'm going to figure out how to fix this. And their stubbornness is a benefit.
Right. And let it go.
Just keep
let
trying
it go what the solution might be.
Right. Keep trying new ways to solve it. Because then you know when you're there.
Right. Awesome. So, many years in business, a parent, a husband. When you think about your legacy and the kind of how you'd like to be remembered, what would you love for your legacy to be?
So certainly, I spend a lot of time now working with early stage entrepreneurs and working with wannabe entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so at one level, I kind of want people to feel that I helped make this demystified. That get rid of the sense that, and I'll be talking about it, with your audience today, is that you don't need to be in Silicon Valley, you don't need to have a computer science degree, you don't need to have been on Dean's List. That really anybody who has an idea and wants to make it happen can do that.
Yeah.
And I feel too many people are scared to start. And so I kind of think, when I go speak to schools, I go, if I can just convince one person not to be a banker or a lawyer and start a company, I will have succeeded in life.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've done that a couple of times. Yeah.
Well, one at a time, that's all it takes.
The world doesn't need any more bankers. Awesome. And so we've called this series Modern Entrepreneur. What do you feel like it means to be a modern entrepreneur?
I think it's a flexibility thing.
Yeah.
I think it's that sense that when I was a lad, they didn't even have a word for what we did. We just wanted to try new things. We wanted to start things. And then it became an entrepreneur, but now it's become this hot, sexy,
like TV shows,
sexy thing.
Yeah.
And I think the modern entrepreneur recognizes that there is skills to it, that you can learn how to do it better, but that fundamentally, a modern entrepreneur is someone who says, I don't like the way this is done, and I'm just going to change it. And not feel there's some mystique to that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. That was awesome. Would you be willing to sign our wall?
I would be delighted.
Thank you.
Yeah, and taking the time to understand your client. I think a lot of times we think we understand the client, but if you ask the client, what's your biggest frustration, what's your biggest challenge, what's your biggest pain point, a lot of times we get responses that we didn't even expect.